Hey everyone, how's your day going? Whether it's been good or rough, you're not alone. So sit back, relax, and let's step into the world of mystery together. Ethan and Claire had spent years yearning for a quieter life, far from the chaos of the city. They had grown tired of the relentless noise, the crowded streets, and the artificial lights that never dimmed. The idea of owning land, of breathing fresh country air and living at their own pace had always been their shared dream. And now they had finally made it a reality. Their new home was a 200-acre farm in the heart of rural Iowa, surrounded by vast cornfields stretching endlessly in every direction. The farmhouse was old but full of character, 2 stories high, with a rustic wooden porch and wide windows that overlooked the land. It needed some work, but to them it was perfect. It was peaceful, remote, and completely theirs. Their nearest neighbors were few and far between. About half a mile down the road was Hank, an elderly farmer who mostly kept to himself, tending to his cattle. Further out was Daniel and his wife, a quiet but welcoming couple who had greeted them with a freshly baked apple pie on their first day. Other than that, there was nothing but open land, blue skies, and the distant whisper of the wind moving through the corn. At first, it felt like paradise. Ethan spent his days fixing up the property, learning the basics of farm maintenance, and enjoying the freedom of owning land. Claire, a freelance artist, set up her studio by the large living room window where she could watch the golden fields sway as she worked. Every evening, they would sit on the porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset, marveling at how different their lives had become. But soon, Claire began to feel a strange shift in the atmosphere, something subtle but unsettling. It started with the silence. During the day, the farm was full of life, the chatter of birds, the rustling of leaves, the occasional lowing of cows from Hank's ranch. But as soon as night fell, everything went unnaturally still. There were no crickets, no distant hoots of an owl, just an oppressive, suffocating silence. And then there was the feeling of being watched. It would creep over Claire when she was alone in the house, a deep, unsettling sensation that something was just outside the window watching. She would glance up suddenly, expecting to see a face in the glass, but there was never anything there. Only the cornfields stretching out in endless rows, swaying gently in the wind. She tried to ignore it, brushing it off as nerves or her mind playing tricks on her. But then the knocking started. Faint, deliberate, always in the middle of the night. And then came the whistling. That was when she knew something was very, very wrong. At first, Claire tried to convince herself that the knocking was nothing. Maybe it was the wind rattling the old wooden frame of the house or a tree branch brushing against the porch. But deep down, she knew better. The knocks were too precise, too intentional. Like someone standing just outside in the dark, waiting to see if she would react. Ethan didn't seem concerned. "It's an old house, Claire," he said, half asleep when she nudged him awake after hearing it again. Wood expands and contracts. "You're just not used to how quiet it is out here." But she was used to the quiet now. And this wasn't that. Then one morning, Ethan found something that made him stop dismissing her worries. He had stepped outside with his usual cup of coffee, ready to start the day, when he noticed something strange near the front steps. A trail of footprints imprinted in the dirt, circling around the house. Claire heard the tension in his voice before she even saw them. "Claire, come look at this." When she stepped outside, the sight of them sent a cold wave of fear through her. The prints weren't fresh, but they were clear. Someone had walked around the house, past the windows, past the back door, before vanishing into the tall corn. "They're too big to be mine," Ethan muttered, studying them closely. "And they're not from my boots." Claire swallowed hard. Someone was here, watching us. That same afternoon, Ethan drove into town and bought a set of security cameras. He mounted them at key points, one above the front porch, another at the back door, and 2 facing the vast cornfields. If someone was sneaking around their home at night, they'd finally have proof. That night, Claire felt safer. Or at least, she tried to. But sometime after 2 a.m., she woke with a start. At first, she wasn't sure why. Then she heard it. A whistle. Faint, but unmistakable. A slow, eerie melody drifting through the night. It wasn't a bird, wasn't the wind. It was deliberate. Her stomach knotted. She nudged Ethan awake. "Ethan, wake up." He groaned, rubbing his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Listen." The whistling stopped. Silence filled the room. Claire grabbed her phone and pulled up the security camera feed. The front and back porch showed nothing but shadows. But then, as she clicked on the feed facing the cornfield, her blood ran cold. At the very edge of the property, barely visible in the dim glow of the moonlight, was a figure, standing completely still, facing the house, watching. Claire's grip on the phone tightened. Ethan. Ethan sat up straight, his expression shifting from grogginess to something much more serious. He grabbed the shotgun from the closet and headed toward the door. Claire followed him, heart pounding. As they stepped onto the porch, the night air was eerily still. No rustling of leaves, no sounds of crickets, just silence. Ethan racked the shotgun, the metallic click cutting through the darkness. "Hey," he shouted toward the field. "You need to get the hell off my land." No movement. Then, slowly, the figure turned and walked into the corn, disappearing without a sound. Ethan exhaled sharply, lowering the gun. "Come back inside," Claire whispered. He hesitated before finally relenting. "We're calling the sheriff in the morning." But when they reviewed the camera footage the next day, Claire's unease only grew. The figure hadn't just appeared at the edge of the field. It had been standing there for hours. Ethan wasted no time the next morning. He called the local sheriff's office and explained what had happened. The deputy on the line didn't seem particularly alarmed, treating the situation as if it were nothing more than a trespassing incident. "Probably just some drifter or some kids messing around," the deputy said, sounding bored. "We'll send someone out to take a look when we can." But no one ever came. By nightfall, Ethan was frustrated, but Claire felt something deeper. Unease, a growing sense that whatever was happening on their land was far from harmless. The image of the figure standing at the edge of the field, watching them for hours, refused to leave her mind. Then it escalated. That night, just past 1:30 a.m., Claire woke up with a start. Not from knocking, not from whistling, but from something much worse. Chanting. She sat up, heart hammering, ears straining to hear. The sound was faint, almost blending with the wind, but it was there. A low, rhythmic murmur, carrying through the stillness. She nudged Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you hear that?" Half asleep, he groaned and rubbed his face. But as soon as he focused, his body tensed. He didn't say a word. He just reached for the shotgun. Claire grabbed her phone and pulled up the security camera feed, flipping between angles. The grainy, infrared footage made the landscape look surreal, the cornstalks ghostly white against the dark sky. First, she saw nothing, then movement. Far at the edge of the field, near where the figure had stood the night before, shadows flickered. More than one, and in the center of them, something was lying on the ground. "Ethan," she whispered, gripping his arm. "There's more of them." Ethan was already moving. He yanked open the front door and stepped onto the porch, shotgun raised. Claire followed, though every instinct screamed at her to stay inside. The chanting was clearer now. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language she recognized. It rose and fell in a steady rhythm, hypnotic and unsettling. Then, as if sensing they were being watched, the voices stopped. Dead silence. Ethan switched on the barn's floodlight. The powerful beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the edge of the cornfield. And there they were. At least half a dozen figures stood in a loose circle. Their faces were obscured by hoods or crude animal skull masks. They weren't moving, just standing. Lying between them was a calf. It wasn't moving either. Blood pooled beneath its body, soaking into the dirt. Claire clapped a hand over her mouth, fighting back a gasp. Ethan, however, had no hesitation. He raised the shotgun. "I don't know what the hell you think you're doing, but this is private property. Get the hell off my land." None of them reacted. Then, in eerie unison, the figures turned their heads toward the house, slow and deliberate. And then they started moving, not toward the house, not toward Ethan, into the corn. One by one, they backed away into the towering stalks, disappearing into the shadows as if they had never been there at all. No rush, no panic, just slow, calculated steps until the last of them vanished. Ethan fired a shot into the air, the echo slicing through the silence. But there was no response. Claire grabbed his arm. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Come inside." He lingered for a moment, staring into the darkened field. Then, finally, he turned and locked the door behind them. Inside, Claire sat at the kitchen table, gripping a cup of coffee with trembling hands. Ethan checked the locks 3 times over. Neither of them spoke for what felt like an eternity. Then Ethan muttered, almost to himself, "We're leaving first thing tomorrow." Claire nodded, but deep down, she knew, whatever was happening, it wasn't going to let them leave so easily. Morning came, but neither Ethan nor Claire felt any relief. The golden light stretching over the cornfields did little to push away the unease that had settled deep in their bones. The night before had shaken them, and now the only thing on their minds was getting away from this place as fast as possible. Ethan wasted no time. He grabbed their bags, stuffing only the essentials into a couple of duffels. Claire, hands still trembling, called the nearest motel in town to book a room. She could barely keep her voice steady as she asked if they had any vacancies. But before they left, Ethan had an idea. "I need to check the security footage," he muttered, pulling up the laptop. Claire hesitated. A part of her didn't want to see what had been recorded. She knew whatever was on that footage wasn't going to make her feel better. But another part of her needed to know. They fast-forwarded through the early hours of the night, stopping at the moment when the figures had been standing in the field. The grainy black and white footage showed them clearly 7 cloaked figures circling the lifeless calf, unmoving, waiting. Ethan pushed the video forward, watching as the figures backed into the cornfield. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Claire's stomach twisted as she watched. Minutes after she and Ethan had gone inside, movement flickered on the screen. The figures came back. Not just 7. More. They emerged from the corn, but this time they didn't stop at the edge of the field. They walked closer. Claire's breath hitched as the cloaked figures moved toward the house, slow and deliberate, spreading out, some heading toward the front porch, others to the back. One even veered toward the barn. Then the screen glitched. Static filled the video for 5 long, agonizing seconds. When the feed returned, they were gone. Claire gripped Ethan's arm. Where did they go? Ethan rewound the footage, playing it again, his jaw tightening. The figures inched toward the house, the video cut out, and when it came back, nothing. But the worst part was the front porch camera. The last thing it recorded was one of the figures stepping toward it, coming so close that all the screen showed was darkness inside the hood of their cloak. Then static. Ethan slammed the laptop shut, breathing hard. "We're leaving. Right now." Neither of them said another word. They grabbed their bags and bolted for the truck, not bothering to turn off the lights or lock the doors. The road to town felt unnervingly long, the cornfields stretching endlessly on either side. Claire kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see dark figures standing at the edge of the road, watching them. When they finally reached the motel, Ethan checked them in while Claire sat in the truck, gripping the steering wheel like her life depended on it. She didn't relax until they were inside their room, the door locked securely behind them. For the first time in days, Claire felt like she could breathe. But at 2:47 a.m., that fragile sense of safety shattered. She woke up suddenly, her skin crawling. And then she heard it. A slow, haunting whistle. Right outside their motel window. The whistle was slow, deliberate, just like before. But this time, it wasn't coming from the cornfields. It was coming from right outside their motel window. Claire's body locked up, every nerve screaming at her to stay still. The dim red glow of the motel's neon sign bled through the thin curtains, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to breathe. Then something shifted outside. A shadow moved against the curtain. Her breath hitched in her throat. She couldn't see any details, just the outline of a figure standing impossibly still. Then 3 slow knocks against the glass. She bit back a gasp and reached for Ethan, her fingers digging into his arm. "What?" he mumbled groggily, still half asleep. "Someone's outside," she whispered, her voice barely audible. That woke him up instantly. He sat up, eyes snapping to the window just as another knock. Louder this time. Ethan was already reaching for his pistol. Moving quietly, he crept toward the window, his grip firm around the gun. Claire held her breath as he grabbed the edge of the curtain, hesitated for a second, then yanked it open. Nothing. The parking lot stretched empty beneath the flickering streetlights. No sign of anyone, but Claire's gut told her otherwise. Then Ethan's phone vibrated. A security camera alert. He looked down. Motion detected, backyard. Claire's pulse spiked. "Check it." Ethan tapped the notification, opening the live feed. The screen loaded slowly, spinning for what felt like forever before the grainy night vision footage flickered to life. At first, everything looked normal. The empty backyard, the dim glow from the barn's floodlight, the field stretching into the dark. Then the camera glitched. Static crackled across the screen. For a split second, the image warped. And when it cleared, the figures were there. Not at the edge of the property. Not watching from a distance. They were right against the house. Claire's stomach twisted. Some were crouched by the back door. Others were at the windows, pressed so close their hoods brushed the glass. One stood directly in front of the camera. She could barely make out its face beneath the hood. Pale, hollow eyes, a mouth that seemed stretched just a little too wide. Then suddenly the figure twitched. Its head snapped to the side in a jerky, unnatural movement as if its body was glitching. The screen cut to static. Claire's breath hitched. "Ethan." A loud bang erupted from outside. Not from the window, from the motel door. The handle rattled violently. Ethan grabbed Claire's arm and shoved her toward the bathroom. "Go. Lock the door." She ran, slamming the door shut and twisting the lock. Her hands shook as she pressed herself against the cold tile, heart hammering. Outside, she could hear Ethan moving, the pistol's safety clicking off. Another bang. Then silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating. Then Ethan's voice, soft and urgent. "Claire, open the door." Something about his tone made her freeze. Slowly, she reached for the lock and cracked the door open. Ethan stood stiffly in the center of the room, staring at the window. Claire followed his gaze, then felt her stomach drop. Something was written on the glass. "Let us in." The words were smeared across the window in something dark. And just beneath them, a handprint. But it wasn't normal. The fingers were too long, and there were too many of them. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The words on the motel window, "Let us in," looked smeared, almost dripping, as if they had been scrawled hastily in something dark. But the handprint beneath it was worse. It was too large. The fingers stretched long and spindly, nearly touching the bottom of the glass. And there weren't 5 fingers, there were 6. Ethan didn't move. His grip on the pistol was iron tight. His breathing slow and controlled, but Claire could see the tension in his shoulders. He was scared. Then the doorknob rattled. Claire's entire body tensed. The door wasn't shaking, it was being twisted. Slowly, deliberately, like whoever was outside was testing the lock. Ethan took a step forward, gun aimed. "Who's there?" he barked. Silence. Then, from the other side of the door, a whisper. "Let us in." Claire felt a cold dread settle deep in her chest. The voice didn't sound right. It wasn't just one person. It was layered, overlapping, multiple voices speaking at once. Some deep and guttural, others high and distorted, all combining into something that sent a primal, sickening fear through her body. Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger. "I swear, if you don't back away." Click. Claire's stomach dropped. The lock had turned. Her breath came in short gasps. That wasn't possible. They had locked it. Ethan reacted instantly, slamming the deadbolt back into place just as the knob jerked violently. That was it. Claire grabbed their bags, her hands shaking. "Ethan," she whispered, "we have to go." Bang. The sound echoed through the small room. Bang, bang. The door shook with each impact, the force behind it growing stronger. Ethan took another step back, gun still raised. "Get in the truck. Now." Claire didn't need to be told twice. She snatched the keys from the bedside table and bolted for the door. The hallway was empty. No sign of anyone. No retreating footsteps. Just the eerie hum of the motel's fluorescent lights, flickering slightly overhead. Ethan was right behind her. He scanned both ends of the hallway before grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the exit. They didn't slow down. They sprinted across the parking lot, gravel crunching beneath their feet. Claire's hands fumbled as she unlocked the truck. Ethan threw their bags into the back and climbed in beside her, locking the doors the second she started the engine. The truck roared to life. Ethan exhaled shakily. "Drive." Claire didn't hesitate. She reversed out of the lot, her hands gripping the wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. They sped down the dark, empty road, cornfields stretching endlessly on either side. The headlights barely cut through the heavy night, casting long, twisted shadows across the rows of crops. For the first time in hours, Claire allowed herself to breathe. Then she glanced at the side mirror. Her stomach dropped. Figures, emerging from the corn. One by one, they stepped onto the road behind them. Tall, cloaked, unmoving. Their heads tilted slightly, as if watching. Then came the whistle, soft at first, then louder, closer. Claire's fingers dug into the wheel. Ethan turned, looking over his shoulder. His face went pale. "Faster," he whispered. Claire pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The truck lurched forward, the engine roaring as they sped down the road. The figures didn't follow, but Claire didn't look back again. She didn't need to. She could still feel them, watching, waiting, and somehow, deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't over. Claire's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, her foot pressing the gas pedal to the floor. The truck sped down the dark rural road, swallowing the distance between them and the nearest town. Her heart pounded in her chest, but no matter how fast they drove, the weight of something unseen still clung to them. Ethan sat rigid in the passenger seat, gripping the pistol in his lap. He hadn't spoken since they left the motel, his eyes locked on the road ahead. But Claire could tell he felt it too. She risked a glance in the rearview mirror. Nothing. The road behind them was empty. No shadowed figures. No movement between the rows of corn. But her stomach twisted. It still felt like they were being watched. Then the radio turned on. A burst of static hissed through the speakers, crackling like an old, dying signal. Claire jumped. What the hell? The knob turned on its own, cycling through frequencies, voices flickering in and out, too garbled to understand. Ethan reached for the dial. Shut it off. But when he twisted it, the volume increased. And then the whispering began. It wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from inside the truck. Claire's breath hitched. The voices were layered, overlapping, speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Low and guttural, soft and distant, like they were slipping through the cracks of reality itself. Then, from behind her, a breath. Too close. Claire's hands clenched the wheel. Her entire body froze. Ethan reacted first. He spun around, gun raised. The back seat was empty. Claire's skin crawled. "Ethan, keep driving," he said, his voice low, his grip tightening on the pistol. She swallowed hard and refocused on the road. But something was wrong. The night outside seemed darker than before. The truck's headlights barely cut through the thick blackness. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the cornfields blending into one another, twisting in ways they shouldn't. Then, a figure appeared in the road. Claire gasped and slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, tires screeching against the pavement. But when the dust settled, the road was empty. Nothing. No one. Just silence. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Claire, don't stop. Keep going." She hesitated, her fingers trembling. "I swear I saw someone." Ethan's voice was firm. "I know, but you can't stop." Claire forced her foot back onto the gas pedal, speeding forward. Her pulse pounded in her ears, but up ahead, she saw it. Lights. The dull glow of streetlights. Buildings. Civilization. The gas station at the edge of town. A wave of relief washed over her. "We made it." Ethan lowered his gun slightly. "Pull in. We need to be around people." Claire pulled into the lot, threw the truck into park, and let out a shaking breath. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "We call the cops. Now." Claire nodded, but something in her gut twisted. Then, a shadow moved in the rearview mirror. Her breath hitched. For the briefest second, just a flicker, she saw something. A face. A hollow, stretched grin. Watching. Then it was gone. And she had no idea if it had ever been there at all. Ethan's hands were shaking as he pressed 911. The line rang once, then connected. 911, what's your emergency? Ethan took a deep breath. We need help. Now. Claire sat rigid in the driver's seat, her pulse pounding in her ears. The gas station parking lot was empty, eerily so. The store's fluorescent lights flickered, buzzing softly in the quiet. Too quiet. We're being followed, Ethan continued, his voice tight. They were outside our house, outside our motel. They tried to get in. Are they there right now? The dispatcher asked. Ethan hesitated, his grip tightening around the pistol. Claire didn't dare turn her head, but she could feel something behind her. A weight. A presence. Watching. Ethan's knuckles whitened. I don't know. The dispatcher's voice remained calm. Stay inside your vehicle. Officers are on their way. Ethan ended the call. They waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. The neon sign above the gas station buzzed, casting an unnatural red glow over the pavement. The road beyond it disappeared into darkness, the fields stretching endlessly on either side. Something was wrong. Claire's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "Ethan," she whispered. "Where's everyone?" He glanced at the gas station. The inside lights were on. The door was propped open. But the store was empty. No cashier. No customers. No movement. Then the whistling started again. Claire's body locked up. Soft. Distant. But getting closer. She turned her head just slightly toward the gas station window. And she saw them. Inside the store. Standing between the aisles. The figures. Hooded still, waiting. Their faces obscured, but their heads tilted slightly as if they knew she was looking. Then, all at once, they turned toward the door. The gas station lights flickered. Then they went out. Darkness swallowed the store. The figures were gone. Claire barely had time to react before a knock. Not on the gas station window. On the truck window. She sucked in a sharp breath, forcing herself to stay still. Ethan turned his head slowly, his pistol raised. The thing outside the window wasn't just a shadow. It had a face. Pale. Stretched. Grinning. Its lips curled unnaturally wide, teeth too long, skin too tight over a skull that wasn't quite human. And it was whispering. She couldn't hear the words, but she could feel them slithering beneath her skin, curling around her thoughts. Ethan didn't hesitate. He fired. The gunshot shattered the glass. But when Claire opened her eyes, there was nothing there. No blood. No body. No footprints. Just the silence. The sirens came minutes later, red and blue lights slicing through the night as sheriff's deputies pulled into the lot. Ethan shoved the door open, nearly stumbling as he rushed toward them, Claire close behind. They told them everything. The officers searched the area, checked the motel, reviewed the security footage from the gas station. Nothing. No figures. No whispers. No proof. One deputy, an older man with tired eyes, looked at them carefully before sighing. "We've had reports like this before." Claire's fingers clenched. "And the people who made those reports?" The officer hesitated. Then finally he said they left. Ethan exchanged a look with Claire. "We're not going back," he muttered. The deputy nodded slowly. "That would be wise." And that was it. They got in their truck and drove. They didn't go back to the farm. They didn't stop until the cornfields disappeared behind them. But Claire knew. They hadn't escaped. The whispers still echoed in her ears. The weight of unseen eyes still lingered at the edge of her thoughts. They had left the farm, but the things in the fields had never left them. And somehow, someway, they would find them again. Claire and Ethan's story is just one of many. There are places that belong to something else. Something old. Something waiting. And if you ever hear a whistle in the dark, don't listen. Don't look. And above all, don't let them in.